Hey, welcome back to the State of Love and Trust. It's episode 303. And this week we celebrate 35 years of this gorgeous record, Temple of the Dog. Got some absolute bangers on it, but there's also a couple of tracks that Paul and I very much disagree on. Which ones? Well, stick around and find out next on the State of Love and Trust.
Hey, I'm Mike McCready from Pearl Jam.
Hey kids, this is Mark Arm from Mudhoney.
I'm Kevin Martin from Candlebox.
Hi, I'm Dave Cruzen.
I'm Tim Montana.
Hey, I'm James Joseph from James and the Cold Gun.
I am Matt Vaughn from Easy Street Records.
This is Pete Droge.
And this is the State of Love and Trust.
The State of Love and Trust.
The State of Love and Trust.
Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Feed the algorithm.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the State of Love and Trust podcast. I'm one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi, and alongside me, as always, is
Paul Ghiglieri.
Paul. It's episode 303. Look at that.
303. It sounds like an area code.
It's like that. 303.
So where is the 303 area code?
I don't know. Someone out there is yelling at us. It's insert your city here. I know 305 is Miami-Dade area because I was there for 4 years. But 303 couldn't tell you. Yeah. So in 2 weeks' time, I will come back to you about that Miami-Dade connection. Until then, if you're watching here on YouTube, you should go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel down below right here, and hit that bell for notifications. And that would be very, very helpful. I think I've said it before, but like 30-something% of people who watch videos on YouTube, this channel specifically, hit the like button. And it seems silly, but the like button is huge. So do that, hit the subscribe button, and we're all friends. If you're listening only to us, Paul, what should they do?
You're going to rate, you're going to review, and hopefully you're going to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm, because that's what everyone does, especially the good, fine people of North Central Colorado, namely the 303 area code, which encompasses Boulder, Aurora.
I love that you looked it up in the time that I was babbling about the damn YouTube algorithm.
To the good people of Denver, Boulder, and Aurora, we thank you for feeding that algorithm. 303.
Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Love a good Colorado. Man, love them out there. Well, we're off to a fabulous start. If you'd like to be on a fabulous finish, you can go to the old pod shop, get a shirt like I'm wearing or Paul's wearing. We got this guy right here, this little Pilsner glass, all kinds of fun stuff that you can procure to wear or to use, and that'll support the show. We really do appreciate it. I tell you what, Paul, people have been buying stuff off the shelves. I see it every week. I see orders coming through, and I really do appreciate it, guys. Whoever's out there has bought stuff, so thank you for that. If you want to be a patron, we got Patreon as well, and a great Discord community, and they hear about things first.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people think, that we're using these funds to feed our coffers so that we can live a rich and luxurious lifestyle. No, that's not what we're doing. We're paying hosting fees.
Can I show you the coffers, Paul? Here are the coffers.
Exactly.
There's the coffer.
It's a big old pile of dust.
It went away into the ether. The coffers. These are not the coffers you're looking for. No. It's a Star Wars reference, kids. Star Wars. Look it up.
To give you the best analogy, we are a boat with a lot of holes in its hull. And when you feed that algorithm and you join Patreon, you take your thumb and you plug one of those holes. That's what we're doing, exactly.
And then you become that meme of that guy trying, like, was it Bugs Bunny, where he's plugging all the holes and he's got like 15 arms all of a sudden. And he's like, just get a bunch of bubble gum and then, no, just kidding.
Otherwise, this boat is sinking, my friends. It is sinking into a temple. A temple. What kind of temple is it, Jason?
You want me to pick this up so badly, and I'm not going to.
You're not.
No, I'm just kidding. Temple of the Dog, Paul. Temple of the Dog. What a record. And just a couple of weeks ago, it turned 35. And wouldn't you believe it? 10 years ago, this came out. This is the box set that came out, 25th anniversary. You open it up. There's all kinds of fun stuff. By the way, this is courtesy of one of our patrons, Erica Meyer. And all kinds of fun stuff in here. This is a one of those little like wee 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 woo, and then you've got This is a fold out poster. Should I fold it out? I'll fold it out.
Yeah, you should.
Here.
So the people listening can hear all about it.
The ASMR. Can you hear it? This, I want to say it's a Lance Mercer, but who knows? Can you guys see this?
I can see it.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh. So that's the boys doing the Temple show from 92, I want to say. So we got that guy, as I fold this back together. And then there's literally, there's a whole book here you can flip through. You hear that? Oh, yeah. Good cardstock. And then there's also 4 discs inside. Here's the sleeve. 2 CDs, a DVD, and a Blu-ray. And that includes performances from Pearl Jam 20 reunion of Temple of the Dog, Live at the Moor in 92, the Off-Ramp 91 or 92, and then when Chris joined the Mad Season thing with the symphony in 2015. Yeah. It's all on there. And it's a very cool thing. Oh, and I believe the disc 1 is a remix by Brendan O'Brien of the original. So a lot of cool stuff on the 25th. I can't believe this is 10 years old, but the record itself is 35 years old now, and it's one of our favorites, Paul. So we figured, we should review it.
We should review it. A retro review of Temple of the Dog, released in 1990? 91.
1991. That makes 35, if my math is correct. April 19th, by the way, I believe.
April 19th.
Yeah, I think so. If the internet's not lying to me. And I just want to say that it's been... I can't put this back together. Paul, can you vamp?
I can vamp. Look, it's really tempting, I would say, in retrospect, when you think about this record, 91 to be specific. When you think about where American rock was, I think at that time, I think we all saw things starting to shift, right? We saw things starting to shift. We didn't quite know what to call that little tremor yet. We would know very, very soon what it was called. But into that moment came what? Temple of the Dog, right? So Temple of the Dog shows up. That's a record that I think didn't really necessarily announce itself as this beacon, this movement defining artifact that says, hey, check it out, grunge, which of course it was, I think, a movement defining record. But the project itself was born out of grief. You know what I mean? It was something, I think, closer to what would you call a communal act of grieving, essentially, with the members of Soundgarden and the Mother Love Bone, what was left of them, or then emerging Pearl Jam, I guess you could call it, right? So they gather, they sit around. This is like some semblance of a eulogy and a blueprint for what's to come, I think, for both bands in retrospect.
Yeah. And recorded in around 15 days in the late autumn, early winter, I think late autumn of 1990, just after one Eddie Vedder, I think he moved up there, or it was either when he had moved, or it was during that second stint where he came up. Because remember we talked to Jessica about this PJ35 episode back in last fall. Yeah, it was actually not just 1 week that he was there; he was out there for a couple of weeks, split in half. And so I think it was probably the back half of that when he came up to hang out with the guys again, when they were in the studio with Chris doing this, and that's the famous story, blah, blah, blah. We'll get to it later. But 70,000 copies first week. But you were aware of it the following summer in 92. Basically. And it was certified platinum in 2007. So if you have a copy of this or another version of this, CD or cassette or vinyl,
I've got a perfume-scented CD.
That's right. Did you bust that out when we were talking to Paul Rackman back in the day?
I might have. I'm
trying to remember the first time you mentioned the perfume. How many records or how many CDs are perfume soaked?
Well, I mean, for those of you watching or listening, just quick throwback. I had all my CDs lined up in rows on the inside of this closet space. I was, I don't know how old, in middle school or something like that. And a cousin of mine was trying to make some extra money, and he was selling cologne basically. And so to help him out, I bought some cheap knockoff version of Cool Water. I spent $20 on it, which was a seismic amount of money back then when you're in middle school. So and it spills. Somehow I must have knocked it over or something, and it just goes all over these shelves. And it like I literally, there's a whole collection of 90s rock that just literally smells like this cologne to this day. So anyway.
I love that. I love that for you and not for me because I can't smell through your computer. So let's do it. Let's talk about Temple of the Dog. We'll go track by track. And first up, it's going to be Say Hello to Heaven. Paul, where do I begin? The rotary-filled opening arpeggio. You got the tone and the size of the drums as Matt Cameron enters. The dynamic, complementary guitar parts. Listen, I would not call this a paint-by-numbers ballad because that would do a disservice. That would provide a negative connotation to this song. Instead, this is how I'm going to phrase this song. This song is the modern blueprint for a wistful ballad. The way that the verse built into the pre-chorus, ratcheting up the tension as Chris Cornell paints the picture of how deeply he is hurt. You got Matt's drum fill transitioning us into that ascending arpeggio pre-chorus, which I love. I love that. Chris turning up the intensity as he finally tells us why he's depressed. Hello, duh. And then the chorus. But it's really an anti-chorus because all that tension that was built up doesn't actually explode into, you would think, a high-gain scream fest. No, it's reserved, it's introspective, almost defeated in a way. Say hello to heaven. 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 Chris repeats that last word as if by saying it 3 times, he'll like unlock some sort of alternate universe where Freudian slip, where Andy Wood isn't really gone. It's almost like a Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Click heroes 3 times together. But Chris continues his elegy of Andy throughout the rest of the song. The chorus repeats again and again with a subtext, I think, of survivor's guilt. And something that I often wonder if that permeated the rest of Chris's life to a degree. And then there's that one line, new like a baby, lost like a prayer, the sky was your playground. Chris knew Andy's talent and his playful, optimistic, kind-hearted approach to music. And this is what makes his Overdose that much more crushing. Mike McCready's solo is perfect. It never shows off, but it dips and it dives through blues licks and patterns with soulful bends, just the way the listener needs it to. And if he was channeling Stevie Ray Vaughan, God, did he nail it. Holy hell. Then you got the final verse, where Chris is fully accepting he'll never see his friend again. And it gives way to that big final blowout chorus that you might have expected earlier. Well, here it is. And Chris is in another stratosphere. If there was ever 30 seconds to encapsulate Chris Cornell's ability to infect your soul with his, this is it, Paul. This is it. I struggle to find a flaw with this song. So why fight it? 5 out of 5 out of the gate.
Look, I'm not going to argue with you there. I think what this you talked about subtext.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting point because there's very little irony on this record, but especially in this song. There's none of that detachment that I think basically became the default stance of alternative rock through the 90s and definitely the early 2000s. And I think it's interesting because when you listen to this song, all the lyrics that you just pointed out, those emotions, those are worn openly. I mean, just on the sleeve, right? Grief, admiration, confusion, and that sincerity, I think, kind of has given this record a little bit of a resilience to it, almost like a durability, which I think is part of the reason why it sustained itself to this degree. You know what I mean? This many decades later, it doesn't really feel dated in a way that you would think that it would. And I think mostly because it wasn't making any overt attempt to be timely, I guess, in 1991. But Say Hello to Heaven, I think, is a unique opener for this record for a couple of reasons. Mostly because, as you said, it really paints a picture and it sets the tone. But when you think about that tone, the reverence is there, but there's an aching there. We have to remember this record was born out of loss, right? Mm-hmm. There's an achingness, an ache to this, and it's an unguarded ache. Again, it goes back to that idea that this is not an ironic record. These emotions are worn openly. So when you have a song that almost feels liturgical to a degree, I mean, there's a church-like quality to it, and you get that gradual rise that kind of mirrors that disbelief of turning from he can't be gone to suddenly, well, I have to accept the fact that he is, and I need to process this. And that's what this record becomes. So it's not just about loss with this song. It's really about trying to speak to someone who's now gone, knowing that you're not going to hear back. And now Pearl Jam's mined this territory a lot more in the later half of the catalog. But for this to happen so early in both Soundgarden and Pearl Jam's tenure as rock musicians, or at least being at the forefront of rock, speaks volumes, I think, to just how ahead of the game Chris Cornell was as a lyricist at this time. And this song, I think, opening the record almost like a church door, just basically like blasting wide open for us. And his voice is huge, man. I mean, it's just, but there's also a controlled chaos to it. And that's what I love about Chris Cornell's voice. It's big, but it's not like wildly big and out of control. There's almost a guardedness to it, believe it or not, as if almost there's a fragility to it. And you feel that fragility on this first track because it is born out of loss. So this song, I think, as a way to open the record is important because it doesn't just mourn, which is what the record is intended to do to some degree. You need your opening song to linger because if there's a finality to it, then the rest of the record just feels almost superfluous, or redundant to a degree. So having it just linger sets a bedrock in place for everything that follows it. So I'm totally with you. I can't say I'm a 5 out of 5 on this song. I do love it, but I'll definitely go 4 out of 5.
All right. Yeah. It's funny to think about, well, I shouldn't say funny, but it's interesting to think about how Pearl Jam, and we've known this, they're born out of loss. So out of the gate, that's an undertone that will forever be in their foundation. And I think with Chris, and I'll get into a little bit more later, I don't know that anybody really realized what he was capable of, how he had already learned how to harness his instrument. Because if you heard Louder Than Love, if you heard, the Scream Pop thing, Screaming Life thing, the Deep Six, 7-inch, like if you heard those songs, you knew that he could scream, you knew that he could really bellow, but did you know that he could be dynamic and harness that power, like an Excalibur, Excalibur. So anyways, fantastic track. Track 2, ooh, another good one, Reach Down. Ooh, Reach Down. The thick, swampy riff to open Reach Down sounds even thicker and swampier with that rotary effect on there. It's simple, but makes you feel like you just stepped into like musical quicksand. And I mean that in the best possible way. Now, it begins as third person, presumably as Chris, but switches to first person within the first chorus, presumably to Andy. And you get two persons' perspectives of what magic Andy possessed as a singer and as a frontman, and he was able to make crowds feel something that they hadn't before. In this chorus line here, I gotta reach down and pick the crowd up. It can have multiple meanings. I think of it as directly as Andy's ability to get any audience on his side, make them feel as good as he did on stage. But I also look at it at the last line of the chorus, carry back in my hand to the promised land. It's like Chris is showing us how great Andy was at this. He has the ability to speak to a crowd, lift them up all the way to heaven where he's at. And that's how great he was. And then there's that one word there that I want to pinpoint, and it's the word want. I want to reach down. There's that recognition of the impossible. The recognition that Andy, if aware of it at all, if that's how the universe works, would want nothing more than to be on that stage, again, connecting with the fans. And after the second chorus, it's like we're in the back of that New Orleans dive bar, swamp, thick. And then just listen to Jeff's bass, Matt's drums, especially the ride cymbal that Matt's hitting. Oh, it's just cutting through. And then you have these little McCready flourishes here and there. It's like we're entering act 2 of a play, but we're not quite sure where it's going to lead. Now, fortunately, Mike's teasing ultimately gives way to more Stevie Ray Vaughan and Hendrix-inspired lead work. And we know that during his solo, he's lost his headphones at some point. because Mike has seemingly left his body, floating above with Andy. I mean, how you could even argue that Andy is inside Mike at this point because he is absolutely possessed. Now, I will say, don't sleep on Stone. Don't sleep on him. He is counter soloing under the back half of Mike's solo, while Jeff and Matt are an absolute lockstep. You've got
they're both ripping, man.
It's incredible. It's incredible. It reminds me kind of like the back half of Quick Escape with Jeff and Mike doing the counter soloing kind of thing. Listen, 4 minutes of this godlike guitar work later, and then Chris slinks back into that New Orleans dive bar, and then the band breaks for that choir of Cornell and that chorus line. And there's that one line in the chorus, and pick the crowd up. I mean, that is peak Cornell. You can hear the reverb and room tone of that vocal booth at London Bridge Studio. You can feel yourself in the space, and it's goosebumps. And I'm doing it right now, goosebumps inducing. And then when Matt kind of slams us back in with more Mike and Chris wailing, another McCready solo. It's his third of the song, presumably still possessed because why not? I mean, you're in a state of rock euphoria at this point, and I'm not exactly sure they meant for this song to be over 11 minutes, but
yeah, I was about to say, do you know how long the song is? 11 minutes and 11 seconds.
It's crazy. But honestly, I'm not bored. 11 and a half minutes, and I'm not even bored. Again, it's a fucking banger, man. I'm going to go 4.5.
Hey, that's a solid way to look at it. I think they were discovering the song while they were playing it, to be honest.
Yes. And it worked.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is I think of where you live, right? I mean, LA is just this urban sprawl. That's what this song is. It's just emotional musical sprawl.
Well said.
And it just extends and stretches as far as the eye can see on so many levels. And to your point, there really is like a looseness there. You talked about the extended solos, the shifting dynamics, all that's there, but it doesn't feel random. It feels very much intentional on a lot of levels. And that's key because intentional is different than indulgent. You know what I mean? And I don't think this was, hey, let's just indulge ourselves. I really think that there was purpose behind every note, behind every solo, and behind Chris Cornell stretching himself vocally in ways that almost sounded like he was like desperate. The same thing with Mike and Stone's playing. So I think, why is this important? It's important because, remember, we talked about this record being born of loss. This is what the instability of grief sounds like. This is what it sounds like because there's still a level of control to this, but it really is pushing the boundaries of that. And hence being 11 minutes and 11 seconds long, hence feeling like something that's being discovered while you're playing it. But I mean, I think that's what we're blind when we're grieving, you know what I mean? And sometimes whatever it is that feels good, that it becomes almost like a tunnel that we have to pursue the light at the end of. And, sometimes it's a dark tunnel and we don't need to pursue the whatever it is that we think we see at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes it's a saving grace. And in this case, I think that's what Reach Down was for the band members. I'm going to go 4 out of 5. I mean, the 11 minute, I enjoy it, but I mean, you have to listen to this strategically, right? You're not just going to put this on in the car all the time. So
it's in my regular playlist, Paul. It's exactly the length it takes me to get from my house to the kids' school.
No, so it is the playlist, is what you're saying.
That's the playlist. Reach Down. All right, let's go to the first single, Hunger Strike. Hunger Strike. This is one of the most important rock songs ever. Full stop.
Yeah.
The significance of this song for its construction, its lyrical themes about morality, humility, socio-political balance, those are huge for sure, especially at that time. But as Soundgarden was about to enter the mainstream and Pearl Jam wasn't even a thing yet, this duo of Chris and Eddie, and we all know the story of how this happened, right? And I mentioned it before a little bit. And if you're watching or listening, you don't know the story, how Ed came to sing on this song, pause the video, go do a quick Google, or you can check out one of our earlier episodes. I'm sure Paul and I have said this story before on the show. But the collision of these voices, these two people at this time, it's like witnessing literally a star being born. Well, actually 2 stars being born in a lot of ways, because most people didn't know about Chris in this sense. And like I said, Soundgarden was emerging into metal's most mainstream waters, but no one knew that he had this in his locker. Right. So when Pearl Jam became the biggest band in the world, a little over a year after this record's release, you could look back at this song as a massive marker. And it's been said before, but Ed and Chris's vocals, their voices, they complement each other just so well.
Yeah.
The chorus guitar and bass work along with Matt's powerful drumming, I would argue possibly his finest on the record. They move the listener with ferocious intensity, which is so cool. Now, because the guitar work is fairly simple, it is Matt who propels the urgency of the track, but it's Chris and Ed who leave us all shattered as the guitars ring out into feedback at the end of the song. I will say, as much as I admire the song, it's not perfect. It probably needs one more part. And I mean, it's basically a verse repeated and a chorus and a bridge repeated. And if not for the performances of everyone, it's actually a fairly pedestrian song. Don't send your letters to me.
In its composition, I hear you.
Right? It's very simple. There's no twists and turns. But those performances and the significance that I mentioned earlier, they buoy this thing back up again. So I'm going to keep it at a 4 out of 5. Sorry, 4.5 out of 5. Pardon my French.
4.5 out of 5.
Yes, sir.
I think that's a fair rating given the context that you just mentioned. You know, for a song about inequality and consciousness on a lot of levels, delivered in a way where we kind of get the showcase of how Eddie's voice and Chris's voice contrast with each other. You use the word complement, and I would agree. I think they complement each other beautifully. But it's the delivery that I think is important, because you have 2 vocalists that are delivering lyrics with almost like a weary, like moral weight to a degree. It's very different than what you would expect from what feels like a protest song. And we talked a lot about protest songs in the Pearl Jam catalog and in other music. I mean, I've brought up, Marvin Gaye and other famous protest songs in the lexicon and history of music. But what's interesting about this version of one is that when Eddie comes into the song, it feels like a moment. And I think that's why it's so iconic, right? It's not this inevitable, how do I say this? It doesn't feel like, Eddie Van Halen ripping a solo on something like Beat It. You know what I mean? I feel like that was almost like everyone knew who Eddie Van Halen was. I mean, he was a megastar. So that was almost like, let's just take something epic and make it even more epic. It was just, quite frankly, it was inevitable. It was inevitable for a pop singer at the peak of his powers, the height of popularity, to say, I am the biggest thing on the planet right now, and I'm about to drop a song that's going to be the biggest thing on the planet right now, and I'm going to take the biggest guitarist and make it even bigger.
That song was Thanos.
Yes. With the gauntlet, Yes. But this was not a snap of the fingers. That there was no gauntlet here. There's no stones. I mean, this is just, it's just London Bridge Studios, and it's 2 people with, I should say, it's a group of people that are just processing. And I think what's important about this song is when there's a tendency to take this song, Hunger Strike, and just kind of like narrow it down into that grunge duet. You know what I mean? And it was a heck of a lot more than that. You know what I mean? I feel like there's interplay going on here, a lot more than we give the song credit for, because we didn't really know who Eddie Vedder was, at least not to the degree that we do now, obviously. So it kind of felt like it wasn't like a passing of the torch per se, like, Mother Love Bone is gone, and I am, as Chris Cornell, I'm introducing you to Eddie Vedder, their new lead singer, and this is Pearl Jam. It wasn't that. It wasn't an introduction. It wasn't a passing of the torch. It almost felt like a moment of overlap. You know what I mean? You get these 2 voices, and I think this is important because their voices do overlap in the song. Right. So there's 2 voices, and they're kind of like circling this same idea of just unease. Well, I don't know what kind of unease you want it to be. Unease of losing a friend, moral unease. They're both coming at it from different angles, obviously, right? And because Chris knew Eddie on a much deeper level Chris knew Andy on a much deeper level than Eddie did at the time. But Eddie's entrance, it's not clean, man. It's not polished. It's just this instinctive, like, the dude walks into a room and this song is ripping and he's feeling it, and then he just starts singing to it. You know what I mean?
And it happens to be the delivery
raw.
that Chris always thought it should be as the second voice.
Yeah, and
it's an eclipse.
Yeah, that's good. And it turned out to be a prophetic eclipse. So that's a perfect analogy to use, because it is prophetic, obviously. So, and I think it's the rawness that turned out to be prophetic and the impact that went along with it.
Right.
So I'm going to go, I want to give it a 5 out of 5 because it's one of my favorite songs of the era. But I will admit that, I mean, the simplicity, well, is that fair? Are we dinging the
I dinged it. You don't have to ding it.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what, man? I'm just going to go 5 out of 5. Why?
Yeah. So we each have a 5er in the first 3. Love it. By the way, anybody who's keeping tabs at home, I've been very generous so far, right? I mean, for good reason, because the song has been fucking killer. Not everything is going to be this high. Not everything. Stay with me. Stay with me. Pushing Forward Back is next. This is the first song on the record not written by Chris Cornell. And by the way, I'm curious how many of you out there realized how proficient a songwriter Chris Cornell was back then. I know that I can only speak for myself, but I think I just assumed that Kim Thayil wrote all the Soundgarden shit when I was younger, and I probably just assumed that Stone and Mike and Jeff wrote all the Temple stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, this album was in many ways not just a coming out party for Ed, but also for the diversity and songwriting brilliance of Chris Cornell. So later on, when I was older, I was reading through the line notes, in my thing here, and well, not in this one, but in the older CD that I had back in the day, back in high school, whatever. And I noticed that Pushing Forward Back was one of only 3 songs on the record written by Stone and not Chris. So I was very surprised and being like, oh, okay, interesting. That said, this opening riff is clearly a Stone riff. I mean, that full-throated power chord thing, it turns into the palm muted versions of that in the verses. I mean, think about that dynamic in Alive.
It feels like a Mother Love Boat song when it first kicks in. Like you can hear Andy just like scream at the beginning just to kick it off. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And like I said, when he's think about the Alive riff, right? It's open, it's full down, da, 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 da. But when it gets to the verse, it's the same exact thing. He's just palm muting it, so it's much more subdued. And it sits alongside what Mike's doing better for Eddie to sing over. This is a classic rock guitar thing, and he does it here. And in the pre-chorus, the guitar is sort of split, and you have Mike and Stone playing like a counter rhythm to what Matt and Jeff are doing. Again, as I always say, it amps up the tension. Now, talking about Chris Cornell's lyrics, they speak to resistance. There is a number of lines in this one that, to me, suggest growing up, leaving the nest, but also being pulled into a situation you don't want to be in. But I think therein lies the paradox, because as we desire independence, we also have to deal with conflict on our own in many ways. And the last 90 seconds or so of this song reminds me a lot, as you mentioned before at the beginning, Mother Love Bone. It's super funky, it's groovy, it's all vibes. I mean, there's not much of a structure going on, and it's not really trying to get you to the next thing. It's just there for you to enjoy, to get comfortable in. And then you have this quasi band break where Chris kind of layers his vocals and Matt's doing his thing. And that's a fun wrinkle. And it's a cool way to break up that funky outro. And another reminder that Chris is an absolute powerhouse. But I think we already knew that. This is a fun one. Even if it doesn't get as deep as others, it's a very solid song. But while I thoroughly enjoy it, it almost sounds like they had 2/3 of a song and they weren't really sure how to end it. So for that, I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Okay. I think that's fair. And I say that because we got to remember, like the first couple of tracks that we talked about here, Say Hello to Heaven and Reach Down, those were written in response to Andy Wood's death.
Yes.
So and you feel that in the music, right? The other songs were written by Chris on tour prior to Andy's death, or reworked from existing material from demos that Stone and Jeff already had. So it's very possible that this song was a demo of an upcoming Mother Love Bone song, or a song that maybe didn't make it onto Apple or something like that, or something that Stone was just toying around with for the future. And it feels that way. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. But when you think about the singles that came out for this record, it was Say Hello to Heaven, it was Hunger Strike, and no, wait a minute. I think it was Say Hello to Heaven.
It was those two. I think Pushing Forward Back had a.
That was the third one, Pushing Forward Back. That was also one of the singles. So I find it interesting that this song happened to be one that was pushed as a single, and I feel like it was almost a nod to what was lost. You know, it was a nod to the sound that was inevitably going to change. Right. It was a nod to a lyricist that we would never hear live again. You know what I mean? As a vocalist, all that's very present in the song, and it leans more into groove and repetition here. It's almost hypnotic in that way, which I kind of dig. Lyrically, it's stuck. Right? It's literally trying to move forward, like, you know, pushing forward back, but being pulled back. So I think it's less immediate, I suppose, than some of the earlier tracks, because those were, you know, they feel like they were written in response to Andy's death. But I do think that it deepens the album's emotional palette. I say that because it shows us that the grief that all of them were feeling at the time, it's not always, you know, reach down, punch you in the face, explosive. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's kind of like cyclical, man. You know what I mean? Sometimes there's a repetitiveness to it. Like you're stuck in a loop. And I think that's the problem with grief. And sometimes, quite frankly, it's numbing, you know? And so I think this song captures that element of it. And I think what you're starting to see is grief manifest itself in a lot of different ways. And I think that is it's a key piece to the record, because I think that when you start thinking about, like, song by song, where this record is going and how it's trying to kind of capture grief doesn't always manifest itself in the same way. You know what I mean? I feel like grief can sometimes, it can show up in different ways, and it can show up in different ways for different people, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So anyway, for this one, I'm with you on a 3 out of 5. I think there are days where I enjoy it more than others, but it's still a great song.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Call Me a Dog.
You call me a dog. Well, that's fair enough.
I think a lot of us have been in one-sided relationships before, possibly even abusive ones, physically, emotionally, possibly both. Chris's exploration into that on this track is interesting because the subject seems to accept that he's not a great partner, but also that his partner might be worse. So where's it going to go from here? Like, will the subject change his ways, or will this thing just dissolve? And I think in his acceptance of who he is, or what this is, he also seems to be okay with who he is. He's not trying to change her, but it sounds like she's trying to change him and putting him down in the process. One of the lines here is, and you tell me I'm low because I've slept on the floor and out in the woods with the badgers and wolves. You threw me out because I went digging for gold and I came home with a handful of coal. But when it's my time to throw the next stone, I'll call you beautiful if I call you at all. He's threatening to leave, but he's not sure. And isn't that the mark of an abusive relationship?
Yeah,
you question.
Like you know you should, and you stay in, and
it's the battered wife syndrome. It's like you know you should go. You know,
it's better, man, right? I mean, it's
yeah. It really is. I mean, you're questioning your agency, you're questioning your ability, your autonomy, and your right to have those things. But I have to say, while the music is lovely throughout these passages, and special shout out to that bomb bomb in the chorus after Chris sings the next stone. The bridge, like the best Pearl Jam songs, is the key here. The key change, the arpeggio, the piano that has been at the center of the music to this point now sits complementary to the guitars and bass. And Chris just opens up to the heavens with the most significant lyric in the song, which is, long as you know the bad luck will follow you if you keep me on a leash and you drag me along. Right into another right into another McCready face melter, by the way. And you can feel Mike dig deep on this one. His strat can barely keep it together while he's rolling these notes out. And then bam, into the final chorus. Mike doing little country licks around Chris. Chris is singing at a 10. The emotion of the song is at 11. And then in the ending, Chris alone, much like how the subject feels, sings, "Call me a dog," one last time, with Rick Prosher's piano doing that little dancing ding, 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 ding at the end behind him. Just such a brilliant song, and one with a timeless theme, expertly crafted and executed. So for me, it's a 4 out of 5.
It's a beaut, man. It makes me think of Comeback and some of the longer, kind of bluesier feel songs that we have in the Pearl Jam catalog. And what I love about this song is just how naked it is. Mm-hmm. It really is kind of it's out there in the open. It's direct. It's obviously very vulnerable. But I also think that when Chris strips away the metaphor and just leans into just that like raw self-exposure, which he's just brilliant at, you know what I mean? Just like the Jesus pose. You get the need, you get the rejection, which you articulated beautifully. But there's also something that you kind of hinted at, which is identity. Mm-hmm. What happens when you're in, you know what I'm saying? And so he identifies with him, with a dog, essentially, this subservient beast. And I think that's important because you really are lost when you feel like you've lost yourself in grief or in someone else. You know what I mean? And I think that there's something almost, I don't know what to, like, it's kind of uncomfortable, quite honestly, just in how like plainly a song like this is asking for connection. You almost want to grab him and shake him and be like, dude,
what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Wake up.
You know what I mean? So in a lot of ways, it's like grief refracted through personal, I guess we could call it like inadequacy, like just not believing you're good enough, and then longing for someone else. And that longing for someone we see play out in so many Pearl Jam songs, and you see it play out in Soundgarden songs too. But all of that combined, I think it makes for kind of there's a pitiful sadness to the situation. And the song shouldn't be judged for that, though, obviously. You know what I mean? Like the desire to jump into the tune and shake Chris. That's not something you should say.
That's part of the brilliance.
That's part of the brilliance of it. Exactly.
The fact that you want to engage in the song is great.
Exactly. And so that's why, for me, it's a 4 out of 5.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it.
It's also brilliant musically.
Yes, this is very true. All right. Another Stone Pen song coming up. It is Times of Trouble. This one is hard for me, Paul. I heard footsteps first, and every time I hear that Stone riff, I think I'm going to hear footsteps, and I anticipate footsteps, and Eddie singing, "Don't even think about," but it's not. Instead, it's "When the spoon," and I'm like ah. Now, I will say that the advantage that Times of Trouble has over Footsteps is that it was given a proper studio treatment that Footsteps never got. And I love how Rick Prosher's piano dances around the guitar riff, which is key because Stone's riff leaves so much space for Rick to play, and it totally works. However, I'm conflicted because I think that space is necessary for Ed's lyrics of isolation. So I guess my point is both songs got what they deserved, but it's hard to separate them. Nevertheless, I'm going to try here. So lyrically, there's not really much to it other than a direct description, warning, and pleading to Andy about his heroin addiction. It's right in your face. Chris is hurt. It's almost like he's replaying the recent months of Andy's life in his head, trying to figure out how to save him. And at the same time, once we get to the final chorus, it comes across as more of a warning to others, actually. The chorus lines, "But if somebody left you out on the ledge, if somebody pushed you over the edge, if somebody loved you and left you for dead, you got to hold on to your time and break through these times of trouble." At least that's how I view the final chorus. If you feel like my friend did, don't fall into the shadows. Let this be a warning to you. You know, the way Chris completely opens up and goes full Cornell here, this is vintage. It's vintage. And the band in full rock mode totally works here. This is a big difference to how Footsteps kind of just stays within itself. It's more introspective, and I think it needs to be. And the way Times of Trouble ends is exactly how it should. But that said, I don't know that it's as good as Footsteps as a song.
Could not disagree with you more, but you gave me the rating.
Hold on. One last footnote I want to say. You know how Ed started introducing the harmonica solos throughout Footsteps?
Which is great, by the way.
It's great. Some people don't think it's great, and it wasn't in early renditions of the song when they would play it, like on the Rock Candy performance, which is on the CD. I always thought maybe it's like a nod to Chris's harmonica solo that's in this song. So I could be wrong, but anyways, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
but it's in the shadows.
It's in the I think it's the light that puts Footsteps in the shadows. It's a better song.
Oh my God! First major disagreement. I love it. Talk to me.
I say that because this feels it's sort of like almost like a reworking of a song originally tied to Mother Love Bone and Andy Wood. And I think that when you think about that relationship that Chris had with Andy and that lineage, it gives it that extra weight. You know what I mean? It's quieter, it's more reflective, and it's almost like the album literally pauses right here to remember rather than process. Because that's what we've been doing the whole time, is processing grief in multiple ways, variations of grief. And this is where we just stop for a second. And I think that restraint is what makes it so brilliant. And I don't get that from Footsteps. I feel Footsteps is boxed in intentionally, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie, by the way, Footsteps is beautiful. It's a wonderful song. It's executed brilliantly. It's a perfect example of how you can take music and you can repurpose it into something new and magnificent and creatively full of ingenuity. But I feel as though that is a song that's a piece of a different trilogy that serves as almost like a bridge to another band. So it's like a bridge to a new place. Whereas this to me is, it's a bridge to an open field where we're going to let go. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not a bridge to a new city or a place of passage or a transitional period.
You can't get the idea of it being the final chapter of a trilogy out of your head.
There's a little bit of that, but like I was saying before, I think that there's it just feels fuller. It feels more realized, if you will. Go ahead. Yeah.
The only thing I would say about that point is that you're kind of arguing it's kind of like the comes then goes argument. Where
I'm saying Times of Trouble. Times of Trouble feels fuller, more realized.
Right. So so I guess you're being consistent then, because
I feel like Footsteps is like it's like a workshop. It feels workshopped to me on a lot of levels. But it feels like Yellow Ledbetter, just with clearer lyrics. You know
No. This, like I said, the space that is left with the ding ding ding, the fact that is allowed to ring out sounds like the isolation of Footsteps, and my brain can't unprocess that, even though the way that the band is more fully produced around that riff in this song works also very well. It just feels a little bit superficial is the wrong word. Almost not one note, but there's almost just like one layer to this. There isn't multiple layers to this for me.
Okay.
Which I don't think
are there multiple layers to Footsteps because of the history that preceded it?
Not necessarily.
Like if you look at the songs in isolation,
no, because you could look at Footsteps and you could create your own backstory. Who knows? That person could be in that cell for any number of reasons. How did he get there? What's going to happen to him? I have all these questions. With Times of Trouble, my friend was messing around with heroin and he died, and he's fuck, that sucks. And it's done obviously way better than what I just said, but like that's it. That's what this song is. Do you know what I mean? And it's great, but like I feel like the riff was utilized in a better way.
There's left to the imagination, is what you're saying.
Yes. And by the way, I'm splitting hairs here because this is a fantastic song, but like, that's where I'm at. And it's not fair to compare it to the other version, but I can't get it out of my head.
Well, it's the same music, so you kind of can't. You cannot. You can't not do it. That's what I meant.
Right. So what did you give it?
I'm easily 4 out of 5.
Oh, okay.
I mean, where are you at? You got to be a 3 if you.
I was a 3.
All right, there you go. So
yeah, okay. Someone's yelling at the computer right now, or into the car stereo.
At one of us.
How dare you?
And you know what? If you agree with me and you think Jason's crazy, all I have to say to you is you should take that personally. You really should. You should be personally offended by his rating.
An affront.
It's directed at you.
I won't tell.
Good callback.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tip of the cap. Okay, let's move on to Wooden Jesus. Right out of the gate, you get that unmistakable London Bridge studio drum sound. It's full, it's rich, reverby, punchy. You know, Matt's groove, augmented by that syncopation of the wooden block, is the opening salvo. You're like, oh shit, what's this going to be? Then the lyrics come in. Now, many of you who know me, you know my thoughts on religion. So to hear Chris criticize the superficiality and the commercialization of faith, that's refreshing, especially at that time, again, early on. And that line about preachers on TV and the sheep in the living room, that's a good one. And yet, while I appreciate the theme that Chris is singing about, it also feels a bit too on the nose, a bit one-layered, which, coming from Chris, is kind of a surprise. Now, again, I totally buy into the idea, the idolatry, and the idea of paying for favor to get into the afterlife or whatever. It just doesn't land with me, especially after so much earnestness across the record to this point. This just feels like they needed another song. You know, musically, outside of the rhythm section, this feels a bit like a B-side, honestly. The acoustic guitars giving way to electric in the chorus, it's a very common thing for the time. And they don't elevate, for me, what Matt is doing, which is great. Now, Mike's solo is nice, but I don't think it does enough to lift this track much more. And if not for Chris's vocal delivery, this song would be probably even a notch lower. So as it stands, it's a fine song, but it's probably the weakest on the record for me. 3 out of 5.
Wow. We disagree yet again, my friend.
Ooh.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
This is, aside from Hunger Strike, this is my favorite song to sing along to on the entire record. Absolutely. And I'll tell you why. You're saying that it feels too on the nose. The title suggests something super heavy, right? Wooden Jesus. I mean, right out of the gate, you're like, oh, this is going to ruffle some feathers.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the execution is really loose. There's like a groove to this. You know what I mean? It's the wooden Jesus, where you from? Korea, Canada, maybe Taiwan. It's super loose. You know what I mean? It's almost like conversational on a lot of levels. Mm-hmm. And I think that delivery alone and the musical composition, the approach to the composition, adds an extra layer that makes the content more nuanced than that. I feel like there's it's almost like a searching quality to the song. It's spiritual, but it's also philosophical at the same time. On the nose to me would be one or the other, and just explicit. And to have both happening at the same time concurrently, I think it adds and it elevates on a lot of levels. And I think, but it's doing so, right? That searching quality. There's no resolution in the song. No. And I think that also adds to the quality of the song as well. So it feels like you've got somebody who is trying on ideas in real time. And that exploratory nature is intriguing, and it draws you in as a listener. And you participate in it because most of us listening don't have the answers either, right? So we're listening and we're philosophizing. I think
that's right. Philosophizing.
No. We're exploring, right? And we're trying on ideas in real time with Chris, but we're unsure what to believe because for Chris, loss disrupted everything, right? So what happens? Mm-hmm. What do you believe after loss disrupts everything? And I think that's what's so key. That's why this song can't be a B-side, because especially in 1990, 1991, I mean, you have these evangelicals on TV all the time. You know what I mean? Like, this was a time where, and quite frankly, we're kind of reverting back into an era where people are kind of leaning back into faith when loss disrupts everything for them. You know what I mean? And this is not a judgment or a criticism or an indictment of that process, as much as it is Chris at that time trying to process loss and recognizing that pathway may not be as simple and clean as it's being billed to be for him by others, right? Or by mass media or by society. And so I think the questioning is important because it doesn't provide resolution. So I think it's an important plot point in the record, to be honest with you, if you want to look at it that way. So, and plus, I mean, the groove is fantastic, and the vocal delivery is arguably outside of Hunger Strike. It might be one of the best deliveries. I mean, it is like a perfect Chris Cornell. It sounds like something off of Super Unknown, the way he's singing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know. For me, I love the song. It's a 4 out of 5 for me.
I love that you got all of that out of it because I didn't see those layers. It was.
I'm also the same guy that we're talking about. Sleight of hand.
Yes, this is true. You often find layers that I just don't see.
What is extraordinary, Jason? It's finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. Right?
Thank you.
And so
yes. Some of you out there will agree with me, and some of you will not. Those who agree with me, good for you.
And those who don't are offended.
That's nothing new for me at this point, honestly. All right, next song is Your Saviour. Just like Wooden Jesus, Your Saviour begins with Matt in a super fun and funky groove, and then similar to Pushing Forward Back, we get thick, meaty guitar and bass riffs, and yet unlike that song, Chris wrote these. Wow, I love that. Now this groove, this chunky head-bobbing groove, this is kind of it. Like the chorus shifts ever so slightly before Chris does that yeah thing. So musically, I'm torn. On the one hand, I really love the groove. And on the other, it's like the only thing happening. So lyrically, the idea of rejecting toxic codependency and staying personally accountable is great. I'm liking that. We're good, cool. And I think relying on others to solve your problems, or even worse, having someone else's solutions, quote unquote, forced upon you is not how we grow. So this rejection that Chris is singing about, seemingly from very far away, considering how his vocals are mixed during the outro, it's very intriguing. This song is so interesting because it's seemingly very straightforward, but also hints at so much more nuance that I don't think Chris ever really gets into. It's almost like this song needs another section, another twist, another elevation. Like there's a foundation here that's super solid. I just wish they'd build upon it a bit higher. So for me, it's a 3 out of 5.
Okay, we're starting to find consensus here again.
All right, sir.
And I say
Thank
that
God.
because the songs that precede this, they're not as, they're more overtly emotional, right? And nakedly so, and intentionally so. And I applaud the record and the songwriting for doing that. This time, this feels just like a tea kettle simmering in the background, or a pot of water just simmering in the background. It just kind of has this like subtle tension going on. I'm not saying it's monotonous, but I mean, you're right. There's not a lot of dynamic changes throughout the song. And what I appreciate about it, and why I think it's necessary in the record, is that there is a questioning of authority. And I think that's important. Like, who gets to define the meaning of salvation here? Like, who gets to decide whether or not Andy's soul is saved, or whether or not Andy's life meant something, or you know what I mean? So I think that questioning is important, and I think it represents a stage of grief. So it's, in that respect, it's necessary. It's a necessary track on the album. So I don't think it should be excised out, but it's also one of the more understated songs for that reason, because it's reinforcing that undercurrent of skepticism that we see in Wooden Jesus, and the searching that we see in Wooden Jesus, and both of those elements that we see foreshadowed in Shades and all the other songs as well. So I think it's quite frankly, I don't think the record exists in the same way if you pull this song off. musically speaking, I don't find it to be as dynamic. I think what works in its favor is that it's a little over 4 minutes long, like Wood and Jesus. It's not a song that stretches into that 5, 6, 7 mark. I think if they took that approach here, like they did with some of the other songs that they really,
it'd be on Mirror Ball.
Yeah. There you go. So I'm with you. A 3 out of 5, which again, I mean, this is a strong rating, I think, for a song, given the caliber of all the tracks on the record.
All right. Penultimate song is Four Walled World. This is the last of the Stone Pen songs on the record, and for me, probably the best of the bunch. You got that opening, slow, lurching groove from Matt and Stone's twangy guitar pattern, and it feels like I'm listening to two cowboys about to meet each other at dawn, ready to drop pistols, you know? And if you listen closely, you can hear Jeff with that harmonic slide up the neck, sort of like what you hear at the beginning of Black, right before Chris comes in. And the key here is the same as Say Hello to Heaven. The band is giving Chris the space to be Chris, and he does it so brilliantly. He is crooning, singing a story with no guardrails, and the best part is you have bought in. You've slid to the edge of your seat to listen. And moreover, the best songs are the ones I see in my mind while listening. You know, the songs where I can see the music video playing in my head while I'm staring off into space. And in much the same way that Eddie Vedder so perfectly articulates what it feels to be imprisoned, either literally or figuratively in footsteps and Nothing Man respectively, Chris does here. He's locked in this mental jail cell. He feels completely isolated emotionally due to the loss of Andy, someone special.
Yeah.
And I mean, Chris sings, yeah, she tries and she tries, but my feet, they just won't leave the ground. And I'm tired of this prisoner's life and these chains that drag me down. I can see Chris as some lounge singer in the 40s or something, like at a jazz club in New York who's experienced life twice over. Like, how can you not feel the pain in his delivery? It's incredible. And what's next is a repeat of the first verse, something that we've seen before in Hunger Strike. But in both songs, they managed to make the second time feel different. In Hunger Strike, it's Ed's spin on the lyrics. In Four Walled World, it's the band. The groove is different. The guitars and bass almost stilted. And the bridge takes the place of a guitar solo. And I'm okay with it, honestly, because the slide guitars that were kind of peeking out in the previous choruses, possibly alluding to this moment, come to the fore. And as the best songs on this record do, the music elevates us to the apex at just the right time. And this bridge leads us into the final chorus, the outro, but it's different. Now, the guitar chords descend following Chris. Mike is duetting with Chris at this point. His lead work is incredible as the rest of the band kind of creates a cacophony of sound. Matt banging the absolute shit out of the drums with incredible fills. And then, honestly, for me, Chris could sing the In My Four Walled World for another minute or something for all I care. I mean,
it's already almost 7.
I don't care. I need more of it. This is how you end a song. It's got catharsis and a musical apex synonymous with Pearl Jam's Breath, maybe even Alive to a degree. It is an incredible song and one that feels like I said, it could go even longer than those 7 minutes. 4.5 out of 5. Amazing.
Yeah, I can't go that high. But here's the thing. I've always felt the song was way too long. That it just didn't.
Clutch the pearls.
Well, here's the deal, though. You talked about prison. You talked about being in a prison, and I think that it's a claustrophobic piece, and I think that's maybe why I've always wanted it to be shorter. I have a hard time getting through it because it's just like 7 minutes. After a while, I'm just like, all right, can we just get to that catharsis? You can't create that sense of claustrophobia accidentally, right? By happenstance. You have to generate something in the composition to create that effect. And being almost 7 minutes long, perhaps, is what makes me feel a prisoner to the composition. So, in essence, emotionally speaking, it is a claustrophobic piece. But I have to, at the tip of the cap, to allowing the structure of the song and of the composition to produce that outcome. You know what I mean? So what used to be the thing I took most umbrage with is now the thing that I would argue is the biggest compliment. I think that the lyrics and the arrangement of this song, they suggest that isolation, and you pointed a lot of those lyrics out, being trapped basically like in your own head or circumstances, which in this case, it was probably a little bit of both, I think, for Chris. It's not dramatic, though. And I think that's what's key. You know, on a record where there's so much of it is right on the sleeve, it's not dramatic. It's really contained as a song. And I think that's what makes it feel so much more real, you know, at least at this point in the record. I think it's grief basically like closing in on us, hence the four-walled world, that feeling of claustrophobia, that rather than like bursting out, which is what we saw in some of the earlier songs, like Reach Down, for example. So it's the antithesis, if you will, of Reach Down. And when both songs are very long, but they achieve different ends, right? Like one song is long in its effort to create claustrophobia. The other song is long in its effort to create release in a lot of ways, you know, and this like communal connection to help process. So I think in that way, being two mirrors, I would argue that it's a 4 out of 5 for that alone.
All right. A tick below me. Now, I would say that thinking about the outro of this song that I said could go on for a while. The reason why I think it works so well, one of the reasons why, is because the guitar chords, they descend down the neck. And as he's singing four-walled world, world, for me, this is a descent into madness.
Sure, yeah. And so
it adds another layer of layer of where this mindset could take you if left to its own devices, if left to linger too long, if you will. You're descending into madness, essentially. You know, and so I don't have a problem when songs are long.
Or an overdose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, you're making my point for me here. I love it. It's great. Another song I love is coming up, and that's All Night Thing.
It's emotion to me that you wanted to leave.
Oh, yeah, I do love this song. Right out of the gate. The way it starts with Chris and that opening line, she motions to me that she wanted to leave. Like, oh my God, already I'm in. I've got the music video already going in my head at this point. So, and then I realize that a lot of you are going to be like, Wayne's World? Yes, Wayne's World, of course. But how about that organ? Rick, you clever bastard. Shout out to the organ on this track. And then Matt with the jazz brushes before the sticks. Perfect. And then if you skip forward to the second verse, you've got that piano that adds on top of the organ. It's such a lovely anomaly to the rest of the record. And let's talk about the lyrical theme here. This one night stand with no drama, both consenting parties understanding the assignment. And it's simply a moment in time that two humans choose to share together with zero strings. And I think that the freedom that both agree to is unique. It could be scary, but it's not. And the idea that she is leading our protagonist into something that he's unsure of, but he is sure of her, and that makes it okay. I think that's kind of thrilling, actually. I think it's kind of like riding a bike without training wheels for the first time. Like you don't really know how it's going to end up, but you trust that it will be good in the long run, in the end. And I think that the safety that comes from trusting your instincts and the other person, even if it's only temporary, that's something to treasure. And I might add a lovely moment, if not a tiny bit cheesy, is Rick's little piano thing after Chris sings like a tear falling to the ground. It is a little bit schmaltzy. It's a little on the nose, but sometimes I'm a sucker for that if it's not too heavy-handed. And I think this really is a simple but supremely effective waltz that, again, if you knew Chris and Soundgarden, you'd never guess that Chris had this in his locker. You'd never guess this was him. It's just a really lovely song where Chris is able to show off just more of his dynamism. So for me, it's a 4 out of 5.
Look, I listen to this song, and I've referenced this film trilogy by Richard Linklater in the past. You know, the Before trilogy. So, but Before Sunrise comes out in 1995, and it's about Jesse, who's an American traveler, and he meets this girl, this French girl named Celine in Vienna, and they basically spend the day together. You know, and it's this wistful, beautiful, just charming, romantic. Exploration of just life together, and it ends on an unresolved note, right? Because he just can't stay there forever. Like he's got to go home or he's got to move on. And the second film comes out in 2004, right? So it's 9 years later, and it catches up with them as these two characters, same actors by the way, having aged 9 years, catch up in Paris this time. And if you haven't seen these two films, go do this. There's a third one, which I won't even get into now, and just mute me at this point until Jason starts talking again. But if you have seen these films, you know how this film ends. All Night Thing is the musical, and I've talked about this with Won't Tell, by the way.
That's true. You have.
All Night Thing is in many ways the musical representation of the last scene of the film in a lot of ways. Because he's back at her apartment and she's dancing and she looks at him and she's like, you are going to, I think it was a train that he had to take to the airport, or maybe it was a plane itself. She's like, you are going to miss that train, and he's just smiling, and it just fades to black because it's like, they're just in this moment that all, you know what I mean? And we just get lost with them again, which is what made the first film so charming and what made us so excited to see the story continue, is the chance to get lost with them again. And there's something about us as people where we have this innate desire to just lose ourselves, right? To wander in a lot of ways, I should say. So when I first heard the song, I thought it was a shocking, surprising closer. I was like, why are we ending with this, right? Instead of ending in mourning, which is where the whole record took me, the album like drifted into something really soft and intimate. And I couldn't reconcile that for the longest time. Like, this was a song where I would argue all the time, like, they should have cut that from the record, or, but you know what? There's a warmth.
You were retracting before we were tracking.
Exactly. There was a warmth here, but it was even on like a hint of comfort. You know what I mean? And I think that this is important because it doesn't resolve the grief. That's key. But it suggests continuity. It's that fade to black. You know what I mean? It's that dance. And we are missing the train. Because that connection, it's persisting. It's just persisting in quieter forms, and that's okay. And we can just exist in that moment. And I think the reason that is so perfect is because it allows us in perpetuity, every time we listen to this record, to be there in that moment. So in a sense, it's almost like the preservation of all of this feeling of Andy himself captured in a moment in time. It's just this manifestation of all of that. So to end on that note was so poetically generous and brilliant and beautiful that I now look at that song as indispensable. That you take that off the record, it is a downer, man.
Yeah.
This is the song that essentially helps us see the humanity in all of this. And it helps us reconnect with human nature in a way that allows us to not only find acceptance, but to exit the stages of grief. And I think that's important because this record was about processing grief. How can you end that record without some semblance of it coming to an end? And I think that's exactly what the song represents. So musically speaking, I don't think it's necessarily as strong as most, if not all, but most of the other songs on the record. But for what it represents on the record, I can't help but give it anything less than 4 out of 5.
No. I wish we could have, and maybe we will one day, have any of the fellas on to talk more about the process of this, and not from like the usual, like, what were you playing and blah blah blah. And I think our chat with McCready was it a couple years ago now? I think he might have mentioned this a little bit, but like, there's no pressure when they were making this.
No,
they had a small budget that I think Rick helped them by. I think they used tape actually to record this, and there's no pressure from a record label. There's no edict. It's just a labor of love. And because there was really no pressure to do anything or to order things in a certain way or to have X number of kinds of songs, as labels are want to do, that it's just it is what it needed to be. And this is probably why it sounds so comfortable in its own skin, and why I think rock in general is so much better for its existence, because it feels uninhibited.
Honest.
Exactly.
And
you know what record does? You know what record does a lot of that similar thing, not to this same degree, but is the first Brad record, Shame. That it just feels like there's no work, because at this point, Stone, is up in the stratosphere. He doesn't have to do Brad. He wants to do it for the fun of it. He's got his friends. Let's just put some songs together. No worries, no pressure. And so I get a bit of that on Brad. Like it's like when you have the ability to just write and make art for art's sake, goddamn, does some of that turn out really, really good. And
couldn't agree with you more.
This is a fantastic record, and I know I was a little harsh in some places, but you got to have a stick and you got to have a carrot. And I think overall, it's an excellent record. I know that most of you out there absolutely love it. Temple of the Dog.
I adore this record. I think backstory aside, it builds on that consistent emotional atmosphere, and we touched on different layers of that atmosphere. What's one where you've got loss and memory and confusion and connection and all those things basically trying to coexist. And I think it makes it a very human listening experience, and it's a guide, I think, on a lot of levels. So
yeah, beautiful
record.
Love to know what you guys think about Temple of the Dog. If you want to give your 1 through 5 ratings in the comments or wherever you speak to us online, please do. We'd love to get some engagement on this, because it's a fantastic record and deserves your thoughts as well as ours. So thank you for watching or listening. If you are on the internet right now, you could go to any of the links below to support this show through either buying a shirt like this or hopping on Patreon and joining the team over there. Paul's got one on as well. It's one of the OG ones right there. Yeah. And you can also do the very easy thing, which on here on YouTube is what this little button says, which is to subscribe below to the channel, like the video, hit the bell for notifications before my voice completely goes away. And Paul, if they're listening only, what should they do?
They should rate, they should review, and they should subscribe on their preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm. Feed it like you're making a call from the 303. From here to Boulder, we say thank you.
I don't know how to top that, so I won't. We'll be back with you next week, and until we do, you've been listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.